Please welcome Denny Emory.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming. As Steve said, I was fortunate enough to start sailing as a kid because my grandmother had a house in Maine. That has led to a lifetime of boating. After spending 20 years as a licensed architect, I had the opportunity to go on a sailing adventure and I never went back to the office again. So for 20 years, I was an active blue water sailor at somebody else's expense, which is the best way to do it if you can. And for the last, now we're in our 11th year, I co-founded Ocean Medics in 2006 with my business partner is an emergency room dock in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And we have specialized in outfitting for medical emergency and safety equipment adventures like yourselves that are headed off to remote locations, mostly by boat. We do some of the people going to Antarctica and the Himalayas and that kind of thing as well, but we're in the broad spectrum of medical emergency and safety equipment. Because we've got such an incredible list of other presenters focusing on the actual medical side of it, Steve asked me to specifically focus and just zero right in on your medical kits and medical outfitting for your boats. I will make every effort not to give you an infomercial, but the reality is this is what we do for a living, and we outfit boats, so I'm going to give it my best shot. Interestingly, we just had Kent up telling you about the medical situations that came up on that British Steel Around the World race with those folks that all paid between $25,000 and $40,000 each to be a crew member on the 67-foot boats going around the world. They've done this a number of times now. It was very interesting that their statistics were compiled because I will normally say that the Cruising Club of America that puts on the Newport to Bermuda race every other year is anal as well, and they keep track of everything. And their studies over a 10-year period, which should be 5 races, indicates almost exactly the same statistics, as does a 10-year study from the U.S. Coast Guard from people calling the U.S. Coast Guard with medical situations. The numbers are all almost the same. I like to round things off because I can't remember decimals and digit places, but the reality is, of those calls, these are recorded, so not the ones that nobody ever bothers to call the Coast Guard or write on a report. The recorded number of medical situations, illness is 60% of the time, and injury is 40%. It's exactly the opposite. I would have said 75% injury. No. 60% of your medical calls to a higher authority that are recorded were due to illness, not injury. And of those that called for outside, hands-on physical intervention, low single digits. So it's not like the Coast Guard is rescuing people and helicopters are flying around and there's that kind of outside intervention. Very, very, very low percentage. And most of the situations you'll be dealing with are going to be somebody who's got flat sick. And what do? The best that you can under the circumstances. So the other thing that I like to point out in a lifetime of boating, unfortunately, trifocals and gray hair at this point, in a lifetime of boating, I only know one person, who's ever had to get on a life raft. One in a lifetime. The reality is I'm not sure I know anybody who's been an active boater for an extended period of time that hasn't run into some medical situation. Now, it may have been a Band-Aid, but at least all of us, stuff happens. We're getting banged around and beat up. So that's where today's talk is going to go. The reality is this race is going to be the Pacific Cup. It is governed under the auspices of the U.S. Sailing Association, which is under the International Sailing Federation, which just rebranded itself World Sailing in December. So you'll get used to hearing about World Sailing as opposed to ISAF. But they're these guys that put out all of our documents and manuals. And in January of 2015, this will be the first race run under the U.S. Sailing's new safety equipment regulations, the checklist that looks like this, that replaces this for boat races operated within the U.S. So they simplified it, they streamlined it, they made the language more simple. So your race, the Pacific Cup, is in the notice to race, refers to the list that I just showed you. When it comes to medical outfitting, what are you going to carry on your boat? What kind of training are you going to have? Interestingly, it's been reduced to one line on that 5 or 6 page checklist. And it says that every vessel must carry a suitable first aid manual and a suitable first aid kit. I'm in the consulting and advising business, and I laugh because the US Coast Guard uses appropriate first aid kit, an appropriate first aid manual, and everybody looks at us and says, what does that mean? I can't answer that, but my business partner, the ER doc, says, well, anything we're going to tell them will meet and exceed suitable or appropriate. So I'm going to take my best shot at it, and we'll go from there. Let's get started on this. Get my buttons the right way. And talk about suitable manuals, because the manuals will also give you some lists of what you might want to have in your first aid kit. So manuals are first, and they don't list them. Turns out 2014-15 has a list of 4 manuals in it. I'm going to sidestep back to that because 2 of them were in the international version and 2 have been added by the US Sailing Federation. In the new 2016 draft, which I got to see last week at the US Sailing Forum, there now is a list of about 6 different manuals. They have gone away from just having a couple of them, and they've added a whole list. So basically, it'll be up to your judgment, but let's go with what they talked about. So the first one is going to be Advanced First Aid Afloat. Peter Eastman first wrote this in 1972. Still looks just like this. It's in its 5th edition. It's probably the most widely accepted, widely used recreational boating first aid manual on the market. It's excellent. It's written by an experienced guy. It's been revised 5 times. It's written in plain English. It talks to you and me, the non-professional, in a way that you can read it. The examples are really, really good. The diagrams are in black and white, not gory color photographs. They're diagrams. Book number 1. Book number 2, as Kent mentioned, he knows them both. I know one of them. Turns out the original version was a comprehensive guide to marine medicine. It first came out in the Comprehensive Guide to Wilderness Medicine when Eric Weiss wrote the first edition. And Michael Jacobs approached him when Adventure Medkits decided to get into the marine first aid kit business and said, can you do a marinized version? So here's the marinized version. Please understand, after they realized that Google, if you Google Comprehensive Guide to Marine Medicine, you ended up with 1,000 A's, 1,000 comprehensives. If you tried to simplify it, you went to the Marine Corps, and they changed the name. They flipped it around, and they made it the Marine Medicine, a comprehensive guide, just to make it more marketable. This book now is every bit as good as this one. And this one's $15.99, and this one's $16.99. If you have these 2 books for under $40, you've got more medical knowledge than, unless you've gone to school, than you will ever be able to use. They're excellent. A big key here, rabbit-eared, read it. Read it, or at least go through it and put thumb tabs in it before you go. These books will get the job done before, or give you a start. When you're talking to Maritime Medical Access and they start telling you things, you can also be looking in the book and have pictures, and it's the best way to go. The next one that's on the list is the International Guide to Ships. That's this big clunky thing. Hardback, heavy, hard to get, expensive, 120 bucks. It's written by the World Health Organization to be carried on commercial ships. If you're going to go take a trip around the world or something, you want to have this on your boat. If you're going to sail in the Pacific up to Hawaii, there isn't going to be anything in here that you can't find in those other 2 books, first of all. This comes out every 10 years. Do not buy the copy that has a white cover with Whiskey Hotel Oscar signal flags on it because it expired. This is the new one. It's got the ship about to run over you. It's on that list. I own a copy because I have to. I would not carry it on my boat myself for doing what you're doing. And the final one is in French because it's the International Sailing Federation. Well, I just spoke in Seattle, and I speak in the Northeast, and there are Canadians that come down. Anyway, that's the last one. Manuals, I think if you got the one or both of the first two, you've got it covered. When we get to first aid kits, I'll tell you that the Michael Jacobs book, the second one is in all the Adventure Med Kits, first aid kits above 250, which you're not gonna have. You're gonna have a bigger one. Selecting a first aid kit. This is first aid kits, just the kind of thing you buy. Again, suitable. What does that mean? Use your imagination a little bit, but I'll try to give you a guide. The type of voyage you're going on. You know how far you're going, what, 2,200 miles, something like that? You know how fast your boat goes? I've done it twice on the Santa Cruz 40. We were out there for 12 and a half days. You're on the big boys, you're probably cutting that in half. You're on the little guys, you might be going a little bit, taking a little more time. But the duration of your trip is, you should have a good idea of what that is. You're also going to have a good idea of the number of people that are going to be on board. And the time and distance away from professional medical care, where that party that you have halfway across, you're halfway there. You're going downwind at that point, so you're not going to turn around and come back to get home sooner. So the reality is your real exposure, unless there's outside intervention, is you're about, what, a week out, one way or the other, give or take, do your own math. But from that halfway point is about what your extended exposure is. So when Kent earlier was talking about dealing with acute appendicitis, and you're now talking to Maritime Medical Access to get advice on that, you can start developing a strategy. So this fits in also in selecting your medical kit. So I'm going to start with this one. This is an EMT pack. If you can take the time and have the interest to build your own first aid kit, you're going to be way ahead of the game, because primarily the biggest thing is you're going to know what's in it. You will have hand-selected and purchased every single item that goes in it. Now, where do you start? Every one of the manuals I showed you has an appendix with a list in it that tells you what you should have. So finding a good working list, if you want to build your own first aid kit, is a possibility, if you have the time. The reason why I show that one is it just happens to be Atwater Carry. I Googled EMT bags. Every major town and city in the country has got a supply house that supplies the EMTs, law enforcement, search and rescue. EMTs, paramedics, just like a carpenter, has a carpenter belt and his own tools. EMTs have to have their own bag. Now, they don't buy the products that go in it. The consumables will come from their supply house or from the agency they work for. But they're going to have their own stethoscope, they're going to have their own shears, they're going to have their own bag, and then the consumables get replaced. So you can buy the bags empty. Because the idea, you go to Walgreens and you fill up a cart full of stuff, then where are you going to put it? These kind of kits are beautifully designed to allow you to have different spaces and different pockets for different things if you're going to outfit your own first aid kit. You can buy them empty. You can buy them with hard goods in them, so the shears and the stethoscope and whatever's already in it, or you can buy them completely full. If you're going to buy it completely full, then you probably want to look at the pre-prepared marine first aid kits anyway. But that's an option, just so you know. Adventure Med Kits. This is their EMT style kit that actually is already designed, and it's for their mountain kit. So it's the Mountain Pro for a trip leader taking a group of people up into the mountains for an extended period of time. Is it marinized? No. What's not there? They're pretty similar, but it has space in it. So you can buy the kit, reasonable price. These are $300 or $400, and you can add things to it from the list that you might want to add. Also, Jeffrey Isaacs is medofficer.net PA. He's the principal instructor for Wilderness Medical Associates that does the Wilderness EMT training on the East Coast, and he also does the offshore emergency medical course. It's a 3-day hands-on course if you've already got some training and you're going to go to a remote location. He can, in consultation with you, pack a custom kit for your trip. So that's an option that's out there. Again, custom kit for your trip. Think that through, put marine in front of it, think that through again. They're not inexpensive, but they're going to be spot on because they're designed for you and your trip. Just as an example. I'm going to put both these up. This is where most of you are going to go with my recommendation. The reality is the Adventure Med Kits, the ones on the left, go from Marine 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000. Field techs sort of owned the market before Adventure Med Kits, which happened to be located right next to West Marine's headquarters down in Oakland. And somebody talked to somebody else probably on the golf course and said, how come you're not making Marine kits we can sell in our West Marine stores? And Adventure Med Kits got into that business. They were really in the REI backpacking kind of marketplace. And they came up with the Marine series. The Marine 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000 are their Ocean series kits, small, medium, and large, up to 6, up to 12, up to 16, as far as the number of people on board. There are comparable kits from the field techs, and I put them up just because I'll have people buy one over the other, and I don't know why they do it. They're almost apples and apples. The difference with the field techs kits is if you wanted a Pelican case, you can get it in a Pelican case at a reasonable price, or you can get it in a soft case. In both cases, all of the contents are organized in color-coded, clearly labeled pouches. So you're not going on a treasure hunt. If somebody has a burn, you pull out the burn pouch. If somebody has a fracture, you pull out the fracture pouch. You don't have to go rifle through the whole first aid kit. Just go grab the pouch that you need. They're beautifully organized that way. Now, Kent and I were talking. The reality is the Marine 1000 is a great little first aid kit. It's not quite as robust as the duration and the scale of the Pacific Cup might warrant, even for a smaller crew, unless you really go and add to it. The difference is the 2,000 and the 3,000, which is like a $500 kit and a $750 kit, have a more robust selection of items in them that are appropriate. And the 2,000 and the 3,000 are almost the same that way, but the 3,000 has more of everything. So more Band-Aids, more gauze pads, more of that sort of stuff. The other thing, though, is all of the Adventure Med Kits have SAM splints in them. They've got the larger one for using on a wrist or an ankle or whatever. You can build a stirrup with it, and they also have the finger one in it. But they've got an exclusive on putting the SAM splints in their kits, whereas Field Techs doesn't have access to them. So there are no SAM splints over there. SAM splints have gotten really, really popular. Everybody familiar with them? They're those orange foam with I'm going to say lead. It's not lead, but it's like lead in the middle. So you can take this thing and form it and make a splint, make a stirrup around an ankle that's sprained, do something like that. And it'd be nice to have one, but I don't. It's great stuff. The other one is the Adventure Med Kits, larger two, have a Foley catheter in it. 2 people have talked about, we're not getting any younger, guys. Make sure to have a Foley catheter on your boat regardless. The other is if you have a major groin trauma injury, like you all of a sudden slip and you fall and straddle the spinnaker pole or something, you can have a major trauma damage down there as well. So Foley catheter, I get asked that all the time, or this war story that comes up is, oh, you should have been with us when we went to Bermuda, or you should have been with us. It is always a catheter issue for me. Those are the sort of the war stories that I get. So Foley catheter, and the other 2, they also have a blood pressure cuff and a stethoscope in them, which you're going to want to have that stuff too, so that you can be reporting back directly.
What pack was that again?
The 2 larger, the Marine 2000 and the Marine 3000. Really, for the scale of this, unless you're a smaller boat, those are the kits that you want as your core kit. I'm also going to put it up, if anybody is campaigning, we had the really, really good fortune in 2014, completely independently, there were 3 new Super 100 Maxi ocean racing boats built by U.S. owners. Okay. Comanche was the first one. Then we got a call from Rambler 88. And then we got a call from Rio 100, which you might know out here because it's a LA boat, Transpac boat. The first one we got a call from was from Comanche. They were getting ready to go straight to Sydney Hobart, then do the transatlantic, and then go over there and do the Fastnet race. And they had a comprehensive list from the Australians, which was like a 10-page checklist right on down to each medication, number of syringes and the sizes of them. We hand-packed that. We learned a lot. Do you need to do that? Absolutely not, unless you know you're going to campaign your boat. because if you leave the US, you get different requirements, which is just, you're going to get different requirements. Interestingly, Comanche, when they called me after they got back from Fastnet, they'd now done 3 ocean races. They only ran out of one thing, and one thing only, ibuprofen. Ibuprofen. They also knocked Stan Honey out cold, which Kent brought up. Well, he didn't bring that up, but it's rough out there. The reality is they were getting banged up and beat up, and one person got knocked out, and other than that, though, they didn't use anything else of any consequence that we had to deal with replacing on that. Prescription meds, I'll try to go through this quickly. Prescription meds are a significant part of your medical kit for a trip of this scale and scope. It's a necessary component of that kit. It's carried in anticipation of need. You're not going to the doctor because you've already got something going on. You say, hey, doc, fix me up. You don't know what it is, you don't know who it's going to be or when it's going to happen. So it's carried in anticipation of need. Medication lists. Each one of these books that I showed you has got an appendix in the back with a list on it. Cruising Club of America has a list on their website under the fleet surgeon's recommendations on the open section to the public. You can go there. All the lists are about the same. If you take any 2, 3, 4 doctors and put them together and ask them to write their list, I guarantee you they'll all be different, because they've all got their favorite meds and drugs. And I was sitting there wincing when 2 doctors were up here talking before, and I go, oh, we don't have that one, we don't have that one, oh, we have that one, and we have another one. Doctors have their favorite medications. You've got to go with the advice that you get. If you have your own physician, especially if he's a sailor, you might be home free because you can get those prescriptions written and filled right in-house through those contacts. A lot of cases, that's not going to happen for you. Fulfillment becomes the issue. There are medical kits. This is a Class A kit. Ocean Medical has now been bought out by MedAir, but these guys outfit all the large charter yachts that are out there that most cases have got EMTs and people on them. Ocean Medics, not to brag, we make 3 sizes of a prescription kit, small, medium, and large, to match the 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000 first aid kit. That was our goal in the first place, because we couldn't find anybody to do it. We provide the kits, we provide the prescriptions, we provide the instructions, and we provide the restocking. We do not do telemed, which is what Maritime Medical Access does. Just so you know, we've also now started outfitting tugboats and offshore fishing boats, and we have some smaller kits. This kit might actually be much more appropriate for what you're doing. That's going to be your own judgment call. It is a limited pack as opposed to a larger selection. Over-the-counter supplies. Mary brought this up. I'm going to go there too. These are the normal consumables. You want to have these. You don't want to have, a crew member going in your first aid kit just to get a Band-Aid or an aspirin. So you want to have a supply of normal consumables on your boat. And how are you going to do that? Well, you can make up a list, or you can do the shopping spree approach, which is my favorite one. Just go to a big pharmacy and walk down the aisles and go right down the aisle and use your judgment. You use Q-tips, make sure you got a lot. You use Vaseline or sun cream or whatever it might be, make sure you've got plenty of it, because if you use it at home, you'll use it on your boat. Severe bleeding, I'm just going to bring this up, and it was interesting as we talked about it earlier in a round table over here. Severe bleeding control. Since Afghanistan and Iraq, there is a hemostatic clotting agent that's come down, finally made it all the way down to REI and West Marine. And it's a hemostatic clotting agent that will stop bleeding. Now, the only time you're going to use quick clot or anything like it, it comes in a powder form, it comes in gauze, and it comes in a bag. Bag looks like that. It's sold now at West Marine and everywhere else over the counter, about $7. It's a tea bag. You leave it as the tea bag. If you have severe bleeding where direct pressure does not stop the bleeding, and you've really given it a try, and direct pressure does not work, you pack the wound with quick clot pouch. Don't take the BBs out. The whole thing goes in there, direct pressure, the bleeding will stop. It was designed for combat. It works. and you leave it there with a compression bandage over it. And then you're on the phone to Maritime Medical Access to assess whether you need to get that person out or not. It's the option to putting a tourniquet on it and losing the limb. We're talking about that kind of severe bleeding. Excellent product. Training opportunities. Training opportunities were left out of the safety equipment regulations because the folks in charge at U.S. Sailing couldn't decide what options they were going to do. So I'm going to tell you, the original ones were standard American Red Cross and the American Heart Association first aid and CPR. For what you're doing, people, that is not adequate training. If it's the best you can do, it's the best you can do, but you want to do better. The Merchant Marine has the SDCW first aid classes. They're either 8 hours or 8 hours and then an additional 24, so 3 more 8 hours. The 8 hours single, they just renamed it elementary first aid. It used to be Marine basic first aid. It's 8 hours long. It is soup to nuts, and it's really, really good. Every Merchant Marine training school or program in the country teaches it, and if you can get a shot at it, that is the suggestion right there. If not, do the best you can do. These are a couple others. I'm getting the sheep's crook here. Just so you know, these are all in the handout. Crew member responsibilities. Mary wanted me to go over this. On this whole thing right here, every single crew member has got to know their own health and know that they're safe to go and not fib and say, oh yeah, just because my defibrillator battery's weak, I'm going to go anyway. Or I'm a diabetic and I really need to have, you've got to think this one all through. The other one, I don't know where the laser went. The laser, right here, seasickness. Every single person going in the Pacific Cup has got to be able to deal with their own seasickness, whether they think they've never gotten it or not. They need to have tried the medication, device, or remedy before they go. You don't take this just as you're going under the bridge for the first time. That can lead to some really weird things, like somebody trying scopolamine for the first time. So no. And then Steve wanted me to mention the relief band, which is the wristwatch-looking job that actually gives a shock to that nerve, that was developed for cancer therapy and pregnancy, is now back on the market at a reasonable price with replaceable batteries. It's called the relief band. West Marine's going to have them right by the front door. We've got them. Anybody in the marine business has got them. And Steve swears by them. So he's my testimonial right here. Also, at the bottom is the information written down. Every single person going into the Pacific Cup should have a health sheet written out, doctors, vitals, contacts, and everything put in an envelope and given to whoever the skipper is on the boat, so that you've got health privacy if that's an issue. But if you've got a medical issue, you make sure the skipper of the boat knows before you go. Because the last thing you want to do is you're having an event and nobody knows what's happening, but if they did, they might be able to deal with it. So that wants to be written down and divulged in advance. It's also going to really help if they get on the single standby under the sat phone with Maritime Medical Access to be able to deal with what the situation is. And I think I got, yes, okay. I didn't cover much because we don't have much time. This is the article that I wrote. It's online at Pacific Cup. If you haven't printed it or you want to print it, it's more concise than I just was. If you go to that link and scroll all the way to the bottom, the printable PDF is linked at the very bottom. Looks like this. And there you have it. Thanks very much. Whoop.